Introduction: The Ghost in the Machine. A corpse lies on our continent, the corpse of the African dream. We mourn it, but we must ask, who killed it? We are told Africa is poor because of corruption and bad leadership. These are alibis. The truth is, our poverty is not an accident. It is the result of a sophisticated system. Consider this. The Democratic Republic of Congo holds over $24 trillion in mineral wealth. Yet for decades, its people have lived in profound poverty, trapped in a war funded by those very minerals. This is not a paradox. It is evidence of a crime. The resources are extracted, but the wealth is designed to flow out, not trickle down. Tom Burgis's The Looting Machine brilliantly exposed this system's mechanics, the secret deals and shell companies that drain our resources. He showed us the what and the how. But a diagnosis is not a cure. This book answers the critical next question. How do we break it? We argue the looting machine is just one part of a larger neo-colonial architecture. This architecture has 4 pillars: the economic pillar, the system of debt and extraction; the political pillar, leaders who serve foreign interests; the military pillar, fueled instability that creates dependency; the psychological pillar, the mental chains of inferiority and division. This book is a forensic audit of this architecture and a blueprint for its demolition. We will move from understanding the disease to prescribing the cure, from building a sovereign economy to launching a psychological revolution. The corpse on the continent is not our future. It is the ghost of a system designed to fail us. This book is an exorcism. It is a call to clear the ground and build the foundation for the Black Empire. Let's begin. Chapter 1: The Original Sin, a brief history of the colonial operating system. They did not come for our souls. They came for our systems. Before the first Bible was translated or the first railroad built, the colonizers' most enduring weapon was a simple, brutal idea. Your way of life is invalid. Your governance is chaos. Your future is ours to design. The current neo-colonial machine is not a new invention. It is a modern, more sophisticated iteration of a system whose core programming, extraction, division, and dependency was installed over a century ago during the scramble for Africa. We are still running on the same corrupted operating system. Pre-colonial Africa was not a blank slate of chaos awaiting a European savior. It was a continent of breathtaking diversity and complexity. The Kingdom of Ghana taxed trans-Saharan gold and salt caravans with sophisticated precision. The Great Zimbabwe Empire built monumental stone architecture that defies modern engineering explanations. The Mali Empire of Mansa Musa was so wealthy that it destabilized the gold price in Cairo for a decade after his pilgrimage. This was not an anomaly. It was the logical extreme of the extraction code, a beta test for the looting machine that would follow. The British in Nigeria systematically dismantled the existing textile industry, one of the most advanced in the world, with cloth so prized it was a currency, to create a captive market for Manchester's cloth and a forced supplier of raw cotton. They didn't just take the resources, they burned the looms to ensure perpetual dependency. To control vast territories with minimal personnel, the colonizers implemented their second line of code: division. They did not invent our diverse ethnicities, but they weaponized them. They studied complex, often fluid social relationships and hardened them into rigid administrative categories called tribes. They appointed pliable chiefs with unprecedented autocratic power over their people, creating a new class of intermediaries whose loyalty was to the colonial purse, not their community. The 1925 British Memorandum on Education Policy was explicit. Its aim was to adapt Africans to their colonial environment, not to provide an education that would foster ambition or critical thought beyond serving the administration. The arbitrary lines drawn in European capitals, like the Nigeria-Cameroon border that split the Bakassi Peninsula, were not mistakes. They were deliberate acts of social engineering, designed to fracture cohesive communities and create simmering border disputes that would keep nations weak and distracted for generations. The genocide in Rwanda did not emerge from a vacuum. It was the catastrophic culmination of the Belgian policy of issuing ethnic identity cards, which rigidly codified a social hierarchy that had previously been more fluid. The final, most insidious piece of code was dependency. The civilizing mission was a powerful narrative designed to create a permanent state of cultural and intellectual subservience. It taught us that all value, knowledge, and progress flowed from Europe. Our languages were banned in schools, our spiritual practices labeled demonic, our history erased. We were taught to kneel before the white man's God, obey the white man's law, and covet the white man's goods. This psychological conquest was the ultimate safeguard for the system. A people who believe they are inherently inferior will never question the structures that oppress them. They will blame themselves. The legacy is seen today in the fact that our highest courts still deliberate based on English common law or the French Napoleonic Code, while our own rich, pre-colonial systems of restorative justice and community-based jurisprudence are forgotten. The colonial project was not merely about stealing resources. It was about installing a new operating system for entire societies. It systematically replaced self-sufficiency with extraction, unity with division, and confidence with a deep-seated dependency. We cannot understand the modern looting machine, the secret bank accounts, the offshore shell companies, the manipulated trade deals, without recognizing it as a seamless digital upgrade of this original malicious software. The uniforms changed, the flags were lowered, but the fundamental code of the machine remained intact, waiting for independence to simply change its user interface.
Chapter 2. The Financial Plumbing. Following the trillions through shadow canals. The colonial flag is gone. The white administrator and his son held it has been replaced by a man in a Brioni suit. The violence is no longer of the whip and the chain, but of the spreadsheet and the wire transfer. The looting machine did not retire with the empire. It simply went digital, finding a more efficient, silent, and devastatingly profitable home in the global financial system. Its lifeblood is a network of shadow canals, a complex plumbing system of shell companies, anonymous trusts, and complicit banks designed for one purpose: to wash the blood and dirt from stolen wealth and transform it into legitimate capital in the world's most prestigious cities. To understand this system is to follow the money on a journey through a hall of mirrors. It begins in a resource-rich nation like the Democratic Republic of Congo, where a $1 billion mining contract is signed not with a reputable multinational, but with a company registered to a dusty, nondescript office in the British Virgin Islands. This company, Alpha Global Ventures Ltd., exists only on paper. Its true owners are hidden, a secret guarded by the laws of a foreign territory. The contract is grossly undervalued. The minerals are worth $5 billion, but the deal is structured so that the profits are siphoned from the start. The $1 billion that flows into the national treasury is celebrated as foreign investment, while the $4 billion in lost value vanishes into the plumbing. This is where the enablers earn their fee. Major international banks with centuries-old reputations and gleaming headquarters in London, Zurich, and New York do not ask uncomfortable questions about the origins of the hundreds of millions of dollars that Alpha Global Ventures suddenly wires through its accounts. The compliance departments are willfully blind, their systems easily bypassed by financial engineers who know how to structure payments to avoid scrutiny. The money is broken up, layered, and moved, from the BVI to a shell company in Delaware, from there to a private investment fund in Luxembourg, and finally, as a clean investment, into a portfolio of luxury London real estate. The Luanda leaks provided a perfect real-world X-ray of this anatomy. They revealed how Isabel dos Santos, daughter of Angola's former president, built a $2 billion empire not through genius entrepreneurship, but by using a web of over 400 companies in 41 countries to funnel state funds from Angolan oil and diamond revenues. The money flowed through Malta, and the Netherlands, paying for a $35 million apartment in London and a $10 million yacht, all while the majority of Angolans lived on less than $2 a day. This was not a complex scheme. It was a simple diversion of public wealth, made possible by a global infrastructure designed to facilitate it. The ultimate destination of this journey is the transformation of stolen goods into social and political power. The luxury penthouses in London and the villas in the south of France are not just assets. They are the end product of the looting machine. They are where illicit wealth is laundered into social status, where the children of the corrupt political class are educated, and where alliances with global elites are solidified. This system is not a bug in global finance. It is a feature. The City of London, the world's premier financial center, is structurally dependent on this inflow of often opaque capital. Its property market, its private schools, its legal and accounting firms, all are lubricated by the steady flow of money from the shadow canals. This financial plumbing is the silent engine of the neo-colonial architecture. It ensures that while the resource is extracted from African soil, the wealth it generates is stored, invested, and enjoyed elsewhere. It creates a perverse incentive for the local elite to remain in power, not to develop their nation, but to maintain their access to the international financial system. They are not leaders. They are gatekeepers, paid a commission to keep the pipes flowing. The result is a continent that is capital-rich, but cash-poor, its future mortgaged by a system that legally legitimizes the greatest theft in human history.
Chapter 5. The Local Captors, the Gatekeepers of the Machine. For the neo-colonial machine to function, it requires more than just external architects. It needs local enforcers. These are not the passive victims of a foreign plot, but active strategic participants. They are the gatekeepers, the political elites, military figures, and burgeoning oligarchs who form the indispensable interior lining of the extraction pipeline. This chapter argues that these local captors are not mere puppets, but rational actors in a perverse system who trade national sovereignty and the well-being of their people for personal wealth, political survival, and a coveted place in the global elite. They are the managers of the plantation, rewarded with a share of the harvest for ensuring the fields remain productive. The anatomy of a gatekeeper. Profiles in complicity. The democratic strongman. This figure, often a president or senior minister, maintains a veneer of legitimacy through controlled elections and rhetoric of national development. His primary role is to provide a stable, investor-friendly environment, a stability that specifically means the uninterrupted flow of resources. He signs the opaque mining contracts, approves the undervalued logging concessions, and ensures the legal and military apparatus is used to suppress any local dissent or protests from displaced communities. His motivation is twofold: the consolidation of personal power through a patronage network funded by kickbacks, and the guarantee of a luxurious exit strategy and safe haven in the West when his time is up. He is the modern-day version of the colonial-era chief, empowered by the empire to control his people in exchange for a title and a portion of the tribute. The warlord or military broker. In regions where the state is weak or contested, this actor becomes the essential middleman for the machine. He controls territory rich in resources, be it a coltan mine in eastern DRC or an oil installation in the Niger Delta, through violence and fear. His role is to create and manage the chaos that makes cheap, unregulated extraction possible. He sells access to multinational corporations or smuggling networks, using the proceeds to buy more weapons and maintain his fiefdom. His motivation is pure survival and enrichment in a system where the formal state is either absent or hostile. The machine does not care if the resource is extracted under the flag of a recognized nation or a warlord's banner, so long as it reaches the market. The comprador oligarch. This is the respectable face of complicity. The billionaire business magnate celebrated on international business magazines. He often emerges from the inner circle of the political elite or the military. His role is to act as the local partner for foreign capital. He fronts the shell companies, facilitates the permits, and uses his local knowledge and connections to navigate or bypass bureaucratic hurdles. In return, he is granted lucrative shares in the ventures, monopoly rights in other sectors, and a laundered reputation as a job creator. His motivation is social capital and acceptance into the global elite. His wealth, derived from his gatekeeping position, buys him a seat at the table in Davos, a foundation bearing his name, and the illusion that he is a self-made titan, not a commissioned agent of the looting machine. The system of incentives. Why they collaborate. The power of the machine lies in the irresistible ecosystem of incentives it creates for these local captors. The carrot, the lavish payoff. The benefits are immediate and transformative on a personal level. They include offshore wealth, billions parked in the very financial systems described in Chapter 2, safe from domestic instability. Global citizenship, luxury real estate in London, children educated at Oxford and Harvard, and a life of prestige in the capitals of the very powers that historically colonized them. Political longevity, access to sophisticated political consulting, PR firms, and international lobbying to whitewash their reputations and maintain power. The stick, the threat of being left out or taken out. The system is coercive. An honest leader who refuses to play the game, a Thomas Sankara or a Patrice Lumumba, is isolated, destabilized, or eliminated. The machine demonstrates that integrity leads to political oblivion, while complicity leads to personal enrichment. It is a system that actively selects for the most corrupt and venal to rise to the top. The psychological betrayal, the black skin, white masks elite. Frantz Fanon's analysis finds its ultimate expression here. These local captors often exhibit a profound psychological alienation. They internalize the superiority of the external system, measuring their own success by their distance from their people and their proximity to Western power centers. They become, in effect, the most effective agents of the neo-colonial order because they share the melanin of the oppressed but the mindset of the oppressor. They justify their plunder with the language of market efficiency and foreign investment, while using the state's coercive power in a way no foreign corporation could. In conclusion, the local captor is the crucial linchpin. He provides the local legitimacy the machine needs to operate. Without his signature, his violence, or his business acumen, the extraction would be far more difficult and costly. He is the living proof that the most devastating chains are not always applied from the outside, but are sometimes willingly worn by those who have been convinced that bearing the weight of their people's poverty is a fair price for a seat at the master's table. Chapter 6. The mental enclosure, the final fortress of the machine. The most sophisticated system of control is not one that is enforced by police and prisons, but one that is policed by the citizens themselves within their own minds. After the financial plumbing extracts the capital and the local captors enforce the policy, the final and most potent task of the neo-colonial machine is to colonize consciousness itself. Its core weapon is not the structural adjustment program, but the inferiority complex. Not the trade embargo, but the dependency mindset. Not the direct military intervention, but the internalized tribalism that turns communities against each other. This chapter argues that the ultimate victory of the machine is achieved when Africans become the unwitting jailers of their own potential, mentally disarmed and unable to collectively conceive of or fight for a self-determined future. The pillars of the mental enclosure. The cult of inferiority, erasing the past to cloud the future. The machine systematically severs a people from the glory of their history to deny them the confidence to build their future. This is achieved through the deliberate suppression of African history in school curricula. As our case study reveals, the typical education across the continent, a relic of the colonial system, teaches the history of Africa as a sidebar to the history of Europe. It begins with exploration by Europeans, emphasizes the slave trade as the primary event, and glosses over the millennia of sophisticated civilizations, from the universities of Timbuktu and the astronomy of the Dogon to the architectural marvels of Great Zimbabwe and the Benin Bronzes. The message is insidious. Your history before our arrival was of silence and savagery. Your only entry into the narrative of human progress was through us. This creates a foundational shame and a subconscious belief in Western cultural and intellectual supremacy. The theology of dependency, manufacturing helplessness. The machine promotes the core belief that Africa's solutions must come from outside. This is engineered through the glorification of Western products and culture. Made in Europe or Made in USA label carries an aura of quality and prestige, while a locally made product is viewed with suspicion. This extends to culture, where Western accents are deemed professional, Western media is seen as world-class, and Western lifestyles are the ultimate aspiration. This creates a perpetual market for foreign goods and a permanent cultural clientelism. The NGO industrial complex. The constant presence of foreign aid agencies, however well-intentioned some may be, reinforces a narrative of helplessness. When every problem is met with a solution bearing a foreign logo, it systematically dismantles the local capacity for problem-solving and fosters a mindset that waits for salvation from abroad, rather than building it from within. The weaponization of tribalism. Divide and conquer in the 21st century. The oldest colonial tactic remains the most effective. By promoting and exploiting ethnic differences, the machine ensures that collective anger is directed horizontally at fellow victims rather than vertically at the system itself. Internalized tribalism. This is not just political manipulation. It is a deeply internalized identity that becomes more potent than national consciousness. When a citizen's primary loyalty is to their ethnic group in a constant struggle for scraps against other groups, they cannot form the unified front necessary to challenge the local captors or the international system that empowers them.
Chapter 9. Reclaiming the Mind. The Curriculum of the Black Empire. The most enduring empire is the one built not of stone and steel, but of stories and spirit. We can build sovereign economies and continental armies, but if our children still dream in the language of their oppressors and measure their worth by foreign standards, the machine will have simply been repainted, not dismantled. The final and most profound act of liberation is therefore psychological and cultural. This chapter argues that the construction of the Black Empire demands a concurrent cultural and educational revolution, a systematic decolonization of the African mind. This involves tearing down the mental enclosure of Chapter 6 and replacing it with a new curriculum that centers our own histories, languages, and philosophies. The goal is to forge a generation with an unshakable sense of identity and purpose, armed not with weapons of destruction, but with the intellectual and creative tools to build a self-defined future. Pillars of the new curriculum. Historical reclamation, replacing the white gaze with the African vision. The educational foundation of the Black Empire must be a truthful, comprehensive, and triumphant recounting of the African story. This is not about fostering chauvinism, but about correcting a criminal omission. The curriculum must begin not with the arrival of Europeans, but with the genesis of humanity in the Great Rift Valley. It must teach the sciences of ancient Egypt as African sciences, the empires of Ghana, Mali, and Songhai with the same reverence given to Rome and Greece, and the resistance of Samore Toure and Ya Asantewaa with the same honor accorded to European revolutionaries. It must study the Ma'afa, the African Holocaust, not as a story of passive victimhood, but as a catastrophic rupture that we survived and from which we must heal. This knowledge is the bedrock of dignity. Philosophical and linguistic recentering. Thinking in our own tongues. Language is the architecture of thought. The over-reliance on European languages as the primary medium of instruction creates a cognitive dissonance, forcing a child to understand the world through a foreign conceptual framework. The new curriculum must elevate indigenous African languages to the forefront of education and intellectual life, while mastering foreign languages as tools, not masters. It must also teach African philosophies, Ubuntu, I am because we are, Ma'at, truth, balance, order, and the countless other ethical and epistemological systems across the continent. These philosophies offer solutions to global crises of alienation, inequality, and ecological collapse that Western individualism has failed to solve. Creative sovereignty, art as the engine of consciousness. Culture is not entertainment. It is the factory where identity and aspiration are manufactured. The empire must consciously support and celebrate art that tells our stories on our terms. This means funding filmmakers, writers, musicians, and visual artists who explore the complexities of the African past, present, and future, free from the demand to exoticize themselves for foreign consumption. The media landscape must be dominated by African narratives, creating a self-sustaining ecosystem of meaning that reinforces the new curriculum's lessons. Case study: The Unstoppable Wave, Afrobeats and Nollywood as instruments of soft power. The global ascendance of Afrobeats and Nollywood is not a fluke. It is the vanguard of this mental reclamation, proving its viability and power. Afrobeats. From the streets of Lagos and Accra to the top of global charts, Afrobeats has done what decades of diplomacy could not. It has made African joy, rhythm, and creativity the most desired cultural product in the world. Crucially, it succeeded by being unapologetically itself, fusing indigenous rhythms with contemporary sounds, singing in Pidgin, Yoruba, and Twi. It has rewritten the rules, forcing the global music industry to come to Africa on African terms. It has given millions of Africans a soundtrack to their confidence, a sense of cool that is self-generated, not imported. Nollywood. As the world's second-largest film industry by volume, Nollywood has seized the power of storytelling. It presents African lives, with all their drama, spirituality, humor, and complexity, to a global audience bypassing the distorting lens of Western media. It has created its own stars, its own aesthetics, and its own distribution networks. More importantly, it provides a mirror in which Africans see themselves as the central protagonists of their own stories, not as sidekicks or victims in someone else's narrative. Together, Afrobeats and Nollywood are a masterclass in soft power. They are dismantling stereotypes, building immense economic industries, and, most critically, performing the psychological work of the curriculum. They are making African culture desirable, respected, and normal. They are proving that when we speak in our own voice, the world leans in to listen. Conclusion: the forging of a new consciousness. Reclaiming the mind is the ultimate act of sovereignty. It is the process of taking back the right to define who we are, what we value, and what we aspire to become. This new curriculum, taught in schools, echoed in media, and lived in culture, will produce the citizen of the Black Empire. This citizen will carry the confidence of knowing their glorious past, the clarity of thinking through their own philosophical frameworks, and the creativity to imagine boundless futures. They will be mentally immune to the inferiority complex and division sown by the old machine. They will not need to seek validation, for it will be its source. This generation, thinking freely and dreaming in color, will be the true builders and eternal guardians of the empire to come. Part 4. Building the Empire. A new operating system for Africa. Chapter 10. The Technological Leapfrog. Owning the Fourth Industrial Revolution. The previous industrial revolutions were built on African resources with African exclusion. The steam engine ran on cotton, picked by enslaved hands. The information age was built on coltan, mined in conditions of near slavery. The Fourth Industrial Revolution, the fusion of digital, biological, and physical systems powered by AI, biotechnology, and the Internet of Things, presents a historic inflection point. Africa can no longer afford to be the quarry for this new age. This chapter argues that our imperative is not merely to adopt technology, but to own and fundamentally shape it. This requires a sovereign technological strategy, investing in homegrown tech hubs like citadels of innovation, developing sovereign AI trained on African data and for African contexts, and building secure, continental digital infrastructure. To leapfrog is to bypass the outdated systems of the West and build our own, superior ones from the ground up. The Three Commandments of Technological Sovereignty. Building the citadels, from silicon savannas to a continent of innovation. The model of outsourced innovation is a dead end. We must cultivate our own ecosystems. This means strategic, state-guided investment in technopoles across the continent, not as isolated tech parks, but as integrated hubs like Rwanda's Kigali Innovation City or Kenya's Konza Technopolis. These must be linked into a pan-African network, sharing talent, data, and capital. The goal is to create an environment where the brightest African minds solve African problems, from precision agriculture to diagnostic AI for rural healthcare, and are incentivized to build and scale their solutions here, not flee to Silicon Valley. This requires venture capital structured for sovereignty, intellectual property laws that protect African inventors, and curricula that produce not just coders, but visionary technologists. The Sovereign Mind. Developing AI on African data for African reality. Artificial intelligence is not neutral. It reflects the data and priorities of its creators. If Africa relies on AI models trained solely on Western data, it imports Western biases, solves Western problems, and cements digital dependency. We must develop sovereign AI. This means data as a strategic national asset. African data, from health records to geospatial information to linguistic patterns, must be governed by African law. It should be used to train AI that understands local languages, diagnoses local disease variants, and optimizes local supply chains. Ethical frameworks from African philosophy. The ethics governing this AI should not be imported from Asalamar or Brussels, but derived from communal philosophies like Ubuntu, ensuring technology serves the community, not just the individual or corporation. Specialized AI for sovereign goals. Developing AI to map mineral deposits, model climate impacts on agriculture, and optimize the logistics of the AfCFTA. Tools